Hey guys, back with another video. Some of you are probably going to be really surprised that I've got this review out so fast. But Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions. The game that was voted on in my pick my next review video. And you know me, I blaze through games pretty quickly. But this one, man, I was addicted to this game. I could not put this game down. It was extremely tough to put down. I really enjoyed my time with this game. Now, that said, this review is probably going to sound pretty negative, and I really do love this game. Don't get me wrong, but there are a few issues and things about it that bother me that kind of keep it from being like one of my all-time favorite games. It still is probably, though, one of my favorite strategy RPGs, and I'm more into this genre now, and I think this is actually probably one of the better ones I've played, even though it's pretty brutal with its difficulty level, and we'll talk about that later. But War of the Lions. I said in my previous video that I was going to play the original version on PS1, but I decided, the translation is apparently much better in the War of the Lions, and the slowdown problems that it has, I don't think would bother me all that much, and they actually didn't. I was right, so I'm actually glad I went with the War of the Lions version. And I guess we should kind of talk about the differences first before I get into the review. I'm not like 100%, I don't think I'm 100% correct on this. I don't know like every single difference, but from what I understand, the translation is different. There's some added cutscenes here, voiced cutscenes. There's a few more story sequences in here that were added in this version. I believe there's new jobs added. That could be wrong, but I do know there are new characters that you can recruit in the War of the Lions, and I think that's about it. It's sort of a remake, really, but I'm probably missing some things. I think there's some new side quests and things like that as well, but I don't know everything that's different. Huge fans of this game will be able to better say what's different in this version, but I am glad I went with this version, and I would highly recommend it unless you just can't stand frame rate issues and slow down. If you're that type of person, I would probably say go with the original. But War of the Lions is the one I went for, and I played it on my Vita here. And man, I love the Vita. Such a great system. I don't know. I really enjoy the fact that you can just like turn it off and then turn it back on, and you're immediately where you were. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts while playing this game and grinding in it too. So that was really cool that I could do that. Love my Vita, but okay, let's talk about the story first. I'm not going to talk about it too much because honestly, it's a really complex plot. It's got tons of political intrigue to it, and I mean the general gist is it's based around a conflict in this kingdom of Ivalice. I think that's what it's called. And Final Fantasy Tactics, the director of this game is, I think, Yasumi Mitsuno. I think that's what his name is. And he's kind of a prolific director. He always sets his games in this setting, or at least when he was at Square, he did. Vagrant Story is set in Ivalice. Final Fantasy XII is, I believe, and so you have this, this setting, this like kind of medieval. Old school kind of medieval setting, and you've got this war, this conflict going on called the Lions War, and your main character is Ramza, and he's kind of like he's of noble birth, and he kind of gets wrapped up in this conflict, and there's kind of a sinister plot going on behind the scenes. I don't really want to say too much with regards to that, but his foil kind of is actually a childhood friend that he grew up with, named Delita, and he was born like a commoner, and their relationship, how it evolves throughout the game, is I think one of the most interesting aspects to the story. Like the actual story itself, I think is a little, I don't know, it's a little dull, I think, for at least like the first half. It does get better towards the end, and this is one of those games where I feel the story gets better the further you get into it. That's kind of almost like the opposite of most games I find. Most games I find that the story falls apart towards the end, but this game, it just gets better. The plot just gets more and more interesting, but it does get more and more complex, and you can kind of visit taverns to give you kind of the backstory of the world. Like, the world and setting here is really well realized. Like, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different characters you have to keep track of. and there was definitely elements of it that I found confusing overall. I had to kind of look up a plot outline after I was done with the game because there was a lot of things I was still fuzzy on. My memory was fuzzy on, and but overall the story is enjoyable. But I think the characters are actually the highlight for me. Ramza and Delita are very interesting characters, and like I said before, the relationship throughout the game is quite interesting, and their characters' arcs are very interesting as well. And the story. Okay, I got to talk about the ending. Now, of course, I'm not going to spoil it here, but the ending of this game is probably one of the best endings I've ever seen in any RPG. I'm serious with that. Like, the ending kind of blew my mind. And I really like the story and setting in this game because it's really grim and dark, this game. And one of the things that surprised me about the game is, like, this game came out in 1997 originally, and it was kind of ahead of its time. You didn't see RPGs with like, stories this dark and violent. Like, this game is not afraid to kill off characters just out of the blue and randomly sometimes. It's a brutal world that they've got here in this game, and there's all these different shocking twists that kind of happen throughout the story that I thought were really cool. But the ending is, I think, like, the best part of the game as far as, like, the story goes. The ending was just amazing. Like, some people might rub some people the wrong way, but honestly, I thought it was perfect. It's the kind of ending that I really like. But I can't talk about it too much because it would spoil what makes it so special. But yeah, it's as far as, like, the Final Fantasy series go, I think this game probably has one of the best stories in the series, and some of the most interesting characters. Delita, especially, I think is actually my favorite character in the game. A really, really great character. So, yeah. Gameplay. Let's talk about gameplay. And I think how I'll do this is I'll talk about what I liked first, and then what I didn't like. Because there's quite a few things I didn't like about the gameplay, even though overall I think the game is actually stellar in terms of the gameplay. So it's your regular kind of typical turn-based strategy RPG, grid-based. You're kind of going from story mission to story mission on, like, this world map where you're going from kind of point to point. There's no actual exploration or anything like that. You'll run into random encounters, that's actually kind of one of the things I don't like too much. You can't run away from random encounters. So if you are traveling to a destination and you run into a random encounter on the way, you have to fight. There's no running away. So that was kind of a little irritating, but yeah, that's kind of how the progression is. You can visit towns, and they'll have, like, taverns where you can, like I said before, you can see different rumors. You can take on errands, which most of the time they just give you, like, money and these artifacts. And I actually don't know what the hell these artifacts do. I got so many of these things. I never knew what they do. I should probably kind of look to see what the hell they do. But yeah, of course you can buy weapons and armor at these shops. So that's kind of how progression works. So what I like about this game, like, the battles are fun. There's a little twist to the battles. Something that I think is kind of different compared to some of the other strategy RPGs I've played is there's kind of, like, turn orders. Like, your speed stat kind of determines your how quickly you'll take your turn, and you have, like, I think it's called CP points. You have, like, 100 out of 100. And you got to look at the enemies, right? And if they have, say, 90 out of 100 CP, that means their turn is going to come up extremely soon. You kind of got to pay attention to which enemies are going to take their turns next, and kind of, like, take that into account as far as strategy goes. But if you've played a grid-based, turn-based strategy game, you kind of know what to expect, and you're going to know exactly how this game plays. But the best thing about this game is the job system. Final Fantasy Tactics has the job system. It was in Final Fantasy V. It's in Bravely Default. I believe it's in Final Fantasy 12. I'm not sure about that. Again, Final Fantasy 12 is, like, the last Final Fantasy game I need to play, but you have the job system where all of your characters can take on certain jobs with their own different abilities, and you kind of have to get job points to level that job up, and you'll get new abilities when you level that job up. And you can kind of transfer abilities between different jobs and kind of create your own hybrid classes. So the experimentation and customization in this game is top-notch. It's amazing. I spent so much time in the menus and just customizing my characters, and I loved every second of it. You know, like my party. I guess I'll talk about my party right now. At the end of the game, what my party was, and I should say, the battles in this game, you can only take 5 characters with you at a time. Sometimes you actually can only take 3 or 4. So they've kind of, it's in terms of strategy RPGs, it's more scaled back compared to a lot of them that I've played. A lot of strategy RPGs, I find you just have a ton of units, and for me, it's kind of overwhelming. But in this game, because you only have 5 units, I actually really liked that. I think that might bug some people, but for me, I actually really appreciated that, and it was kind of a different, kind of a breath of fresh air as far as like strategy RPGs go. So I really enjoyed that aspect to it. But my party, Ramza, the main character, he at the end was a Dragoon. And Dragoon is like my favorite class in the game, pretty much. It's either Dragoon or Ninja out of the ones I experimented with. There's some class I didn't actually get to use. But he was a Dragoon, and what I did was get I guess it's called like double-handed ability from the Samurai class, and kind of applied that to my Dragoon, so you could carry, use your spear with 2 hands and deal like a ton of damage. And Dragoons have, of course, the jump ability, and they can cover like almost the entire map with the jump ability if you level that up quite a bit. So Ramza was a Dragoon. I used four characters, like 4 pre-made characters, and including Ramza, and then a guest character. Because you have guest characters that will pop up throughout the game that will join you, and they have specialized jobs. For instance, like Holy Knight, and the Holy Knight will have their own set of skills that other characters and classes can't get, which is pretty cool. I enjoyed that as well. So Ramza was a Dragoon. I had another character that was another Dragoon, so I had 2 Dragoons. Jumping around all over the place. I had 2 ninjas, and then ninjas had to have the dual wield ability, which is like one of the best abilities in the game, because you can attack twice in a row, which is very powerful. And I kind of got the equipped swords ability from the knight class and applied that to the ninja. So instead of daggers, I was using 2 swords. So my ninjas were just super fast and just going all across the map using their 2 swords to attack enemies. Really, really powerful class, the ninja. I highly recommend the ninja. And then the other character I used is, I think his name was Orlandio, and apparently he's like the most overpowered character in the game, and I can see it. His abilities are like crazy, and they really saved my ass in the later part of the game, because yeah, I struggled towards the end, and we'll get to that later. But that was my party for pretty much the entire game. Although Orlando, you get him pretty late into the game. But I messed around with a lot of the classes. And so, yeah, the job system is great. The thing is, though, with job systems, I know most people seem to really love job systems, but one of the issues with them is that they're inherently grindy, because in order to make the most out of the job system, you have to grind job points to get the best abilities. And I really got into that in this game, where I didn't in Final Fantasy V and Bravely Default. And I actually think that's why I struggled with Final Fantasy V, because I didn't take the time to grind and really experiment fully with the job system. So I'm actually kind of curious to go back to Final Fantasy V. I might do that at some point. So here I really got into it. I got into the job system, and I was rewarded for that. I was able to get through the game, because I feel like if you kind of just rush through the game, going through the story missions, and don't like grind too much or pay attention to the job system all that much, you're not going to be able to get through the game. It's just too hard. So yeah, like the job system overall I enjoy, but at the same time it's extremely grindy. And there's some abilities that will help out, like the JP boost ability that gives you more job points, but I had to grind a bunch in this game because some story battles just seemed insurmountable. So I just had to grind to get some better abilities, for instance, because you have to kind of grind to get some of the other jobs as well. And one of my issues with the game is how obtuse the requirements are for unlocking certain jobs. And I had to go online to look at a job chart because, for instance, unlocking the ninja, like it would have never occurred to me that you would have to have gotten a level 2 geomancer, a level 5 thief, and a level 4 archer. Like, it's just the game. I really feel the game should tell you how to unlock certain jobs, or at least give you a chart, like they've got online, because that was a big help. And throughout the game, I wanted the Dark Knight job. I heard about the Dark Knight job, and that was overpowered, and I really wanted it, and I was on my way to getting it until I realized there was a really bullshit requirement for it that just completely deflated my interest in it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm not doing it. That's just tedious. And what this is when you're in battles, when you kill enemies, they'll kind of like be incapacitated for like 3 turns, and turns will kind of count down. There'll be like a number over top of their bodies, and once it reaches 3 turns, the bodies will disappear, and they'll leave behind either a crystal or a treasure chest with like a weapon or a piece of armor. And to get the Dark Knight job, you had to like master the Black Knight and Knight classes, which means getting all their abilities, which takes fucking forever. You had to get a bunch of different classes to level 8, and then you had to, with the character that you wanted the Dark Knight to be, you had to kill 20 enemies and make sure that they leave behind their crystals. So yeah, you have to go around these maps, kill every enemy except for one, and just walk around like an idiot waiting for the enemies to turn into crystals. Extremely tedious. I don't know why they made that requirement. It's so irritating. It was a shame, because I really wanted to see what the Dark Knight was about. I would never, like, maybe if I played this game again, I might try for it, but at the time, like, I got so far into the game, at the time I learned that you had to do that, I was like, fuck it, I'm not doing that. So that was a little disappointing. That's one aspect of the game I don't like, but grinding, I had to grind a bunch to get past quite a few battles. I'd say, okay, so it took me 50 hours to beat this game. It's a long game, but it took me 50 hours, but I'd actually say that, and I'm not kidding with this, around 15 to 20 hours of that was spent grinding these random encounters. I'm serious. Like, this game is brutally difficult, and we'll get to that in the negatives. I think the game is actually just too difficult. So at many points I had to grind, especially in the early game. The early game is when it's at its hardest. And I was actually almost ready to give up. I was really struggling to get into the game, but eventually I just started to kind of learn the job system. I grinded out some good, powerful abilities, and I eventually got through some of the early missions. And then the middle of the game is really easy. Once I got my party set up and you know, fully equipped and really powerful, the rest of the game was a breeze up until a battle towards the end, which I guess I'll talk about now. It's a battle like right before the final boss, and the final part of this game, you have like 5 or 6 fights in a row that you have to do, and you luckily get to save in between the fights. But the one fight, you have a boss, and for the boss missions, you just have to kill the boss unit, and you can clear the missions. There's also protect missions and just destroy all the enemy missions. And the boss was fine. He has like an attack that immobilizes your new units, but you know, I just got some rings that prevented that from happening, like immobilize and stun immune rings to equip all my characters. But he has 3 Hydras and a Behemoth, and these enemies are the most overpowered enemies I've ever seen. They were about my level. Like, they weren't like I wasn't at the point where I was like under leveled or anything like that. But these Hydras have these attacks called like Tri Fire, Tri Lightning, Tri Wind, I think. And they basically use these attacks on like a 2 square space and attack your characters with this. And each hit does 200 damage. And at this point in the game, my characters had maybe 450 health, give or take. So yeah, that means if they got lucky and got all 3 hits on you, or even 2 of the 3 hits, you were dead. Your unit was just dead. And they attack almost immediately. They have a ton of health. And then you have this guy shooting immobilizing shots at you, and then you have a chemist that's in this battle that's like healing the Hydras. It was the most infuriating thing. I must have gotten a game over on this fight for like, I want to say upwards of 20 times. I just could not do it. And I feel this is a kind of a problem with the game overall. I feel the enemies in this game just do too much damage. They just, like, the damage output on enemies for most of the game is absurd. And the only way I was getting through is because my characters were so powerful. My characters had high damage output, but, like, God, like, and also enemies block your attacks so often in this fucking game. It's infuriating. Like, and even if you use, like, a rend shield ability or something like that, Orlando had, like, a crush, well, actually, he didn't have the crush shield ability, but the rend shield ability to destroy enemy shields, even when you use that, they still block it. They block your attacks. It's like, and this is actually, I'll bring this up, accuracy. This game has accuracy, like pretty much with every strategy RPG, and actually even some healing magics have accuracy. Yeah, which makes White Mage, in my opinion, White Mage is kind of useless in this game because like the resurrection spells you miss like almost like 70% of the time. So I gave up on the White Mage pretty quickly. But accuracy, I feel this might be a controversial opinion, but I feel like accuracy should not be in strategy RPGs. Yeah, maybe controversial, but to me, it doesn't really add anything to the game. It's just irritating. That there's a random chance that you'll miss, and also it seems like the enemies will never miss. Like no matter how good your speed stat is, like it's just I don't know. It just really bugged me throughout the game. Towards the end, when enemies would just block your attacks constantly, it was a buzzkill, man. I don't know. I probably am alone on that. I don't think many people are going to agree with me on that, but I don't know. I've never been a fan of accuracy in strategy RPGs. I don't mind it in other RPGs, but strategy RPGs, it just really bugs me. So yeah, this battle, I was stuck on it forever, and I thought it was even harder than the Y-Graph fight, which everyone says is like the hardest part of the game. So how I did it was, at this point I didn't have Orlando, and I reading online for some stuff, I did see that he was overpowered, and he was really under-leveled at that point, so I was like, you know what, let's get him, go back out of this fight, and just grind him up like crazy, and I got him up to the rest of my party, and then I equipped some angel rings on all my characters, so when they died, they would resurrect pretty much immediately. And then I was able to get through it, finally. But it was still hard as fuck. Like, I still almost lost with Orlando, like the most powerful character in the game. So that fight it was just complete bullshit. Like, I don't know. Like, it just really bothered me. But also, like, this game, I feel like it would be very hard to get through this game without the auto potion ability, which is an ability the chemist has where if you get hit, there's a good chance you'll automatically use a potion from your inventory. And if you just buy X potions, which heal 150 health, and get 99 of them, and get rid of all your other potions, and equip auto potion on all your characters, I feel like I did that, and it may seem cheap, but honestly, enemies were dealing so much damage that I almost needed it. Like, I don't know. But auto potion was a big help, and that helped with the Y-Graph fight. Let's talk about the Y-Graph fight. This is a fight that is infamous, because there's a save point right before it, and if you only keep one save throughout this game, and you save your only save right before this Y-Graph fight, and you don't have the proper skill setup, or your main character Ramza is weak, you're not going to be able to kill him. You're just not. You're gonna be fucked, and you're gonna have to start the entire game over because he's very fast, and right off the bat he immediately attacks you, unless your speed is excellent, or you have the Tailwind ability, I believe. So yeah, he attacks you immediately for tons of damage, enough to kill you in 2 hits, basically. So I had auto potion for that fight, and it made it easy. I was able to breeze through it with that ability. But if you didn't have that ability and you weren't prepared for that fight, even with multiple saves, it would be extremely annoying. You'd probably have to back out and grind a bunch still. But at the same time, it was nowhere near as difficult as this later fight in the game. And the random encounters throughout the game, they were hard in the beginning, but in the middle up till the end, the random encounters were piss easy. Like, when you compared the difficulty of the random encounters to the story battles at the end of the game, it was insane. Like, the story battles were so much harder. Like, it was just, I feel like the difficulty curve overall in this game is just really fucked. Like, it's just, like, it's almost nonsensical. Like, it's really ridiculous in the beginning, then it gets, like, really pathetic, and then towards the end it just spikes again out of nowhere. And then the final boss is actually easy. The final boss, I breezed through it. It was a complete joke. So, I don't know. I felt the difficulty overall was a little too much. I think they could have toned it down, but still kept it challenging. Like, I wouldn't want all the challenge to be removed from the game, but it definitely was irksome at times. But again, I'm being negative here, but I must stress that I really did enjoy this game. But some other negatives, the way casting works. Now, this is another probably controversial opinion. A lot of people probably aren't going to agree with me here. Casting is different in this game compared to a lot of strategy RPGs because it's not immediate. Spellcasters have charges, so you'll use like a black magic spell like Fire Aga or whatever, and it will take a couple turns for you to get it out there, to actually start to use it. And there's some abilities that will help you charge faster. I think Swiftness from the Time Mage job I used, and I used a Black Mage. for pretty much the first half of the game, and the black mage was really powerful in the beginning. Very powerful. Like, black magic was awesome in the beginning. But towards the second half of the game, like, I had to change it. I had to get rid of him because the black magic was so useless at the end of the game. I had the strongest black magic spells, and even against enemies that were weak to, like, an ice magic or whatever, like the strongest ice magic, it did no damage. No damage whatsoever. Like, melee attacks did so much more damage in the second half of the game. And the fact that you have this, casting's not immediate, and enemies can kind of move before you can actually attack them. Of course, you do have to, like I said before, pay attention to the CP and use magic on enemies that have low CP. But I find enemies are never grouped together. Magic's really good for enemies that are grouped together, but enemies always kind of split up. And I don't know, I found like the magic classes jobs weren't that great in this game. The time mage was good for like the haste and slowing magic and things like that, but actual attack magic I thought was useless. And like I said before, white magic I didn't find useful because a lot of it tends to miss. And even like the best cure spells don't even cure for that much health. Like chemists I think are much better healers, and the auto potion ability is really awesome too. So I don't know, as fun as the job system is, I feel like a lot of the jobs, at least to me, felt pretty useless. But some of them have some really good skills. Like the samurai has some good skills, but I don't actually like the samurai all that much on its own. Another thing with the battles, and this is actually something I didn't mind, surprisingly enough, this game has permadeath. Yeah, I didn't know that. But it's more forgiving than, say, Fire Emblem, because when your character dies, you'll have 3 turns before your character will turn into a crystal, like with the enemies. So you'll have a few turns to resurrect them and things like that. But as soon as the character is dead or they turn into a crystal, I was immediately like, nope, quit, reload. Yeah, you can't lose your characters, but it's forgiving enough that it's not. It's not annoying. I think it does add a nice challenge to the game overall. And one final complaint with the game I have are the protection missions, where you have to protect certain NPCs that are AI controlled, and these missions fucking suck. Luckily, there's not too many of them, but like the AI is so stupid on these guest characters. They'll get their subs killed so easily, and you'll get a game over as soon as it happens. So you have to go through a bunch of dialogue again and get to that point just to have them die immediately. In fact, one mission later in the game, it's on a rooftop and there's a character you have to protect. And it took me like 5 attempts to finally do it. And one of the attempts, I didn't even take a turn. And this character died before I could even take a turn. It was fucking ridiculous. But luckily there aren't too many of them. So yeah, I'm sounding really negative, but I really did enjoy my time with this game. It was very addictive. I couldn't put it down. It would frustrate me every now and then, but it wasn't enough to detract from my enjoyment really all that much. All these complaints I have, they're kind of minor at the end of the day because I just enjoyed the job system so much, and I think the gameplay overall is just really fun. But I think a lot of that stuff will frustrate some people, and I think this game, this is not a game for beginners to the RPG genre or strategy RPG genre. In fact, I'm actually kind of surprised I was able to even get through it with the level of difficulty here. And I'm terrible at strategy RPGs, so that kind of surprised me a bit. But it's hardcore. This game it's rough, man, especially in the beginning. I would not recommend it for someone trying to get into the genre. I'd say get a few strategy RPGs under your belt, then go to this. But and I think some people are going to be put off by just the grinding you have to do. And I realize that you probably could get through the game without grinding, but you'd have to be amazing at this game. You'd have to know exactly what you're doing and to make the most of that job system to your best ability. And I think most people aren't going to be able to, unless you're like a master of this game. You've played it multiple times. But I think most people are just going to have to grind through this. But yeah, I usually hate grinding, but in this game it was fun. I didn't mind it, especially when I just put on like a podcast or whatever when I was grinding. But yeah, the gameplay it's got a lot of annoyances, but overall I quite enjoyed it. It's actually still one of my favorite strategy RPGs. I have to wonder about the other tactics games though. We actually have never gotten a sequel to this of sorts. We have got Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and A2 on the DS, which is apparently a semi-sequel to that one. And I looked at these games, and the tone of these games is like a lot more cheery. It's nowhere near as grim as this game, and the gameplay seems pretty good. But there's this law system that I keep reading about in these two games, and it sounds horrendous. Like enough for me to not even want to play that game. Where you have like judges. And they restrict you for certain battles. Like certain battles, you're not going to be able to equip a certain weapon or use a certain skill. And if you do, you can go to jail. Your character can go to jail or something. That sounds fucking terrible for a series that kind of prides itself on experimentation, and to actively discourage that with that system, like it's baffling to me how that is in those games. But it completely scares me away from them. Like I don't even want to play them because of that. And then just the fact that the whole tone to the game is not my style, and like the stories in those games apparently are quite bad. But I don't know if I'll ever play those. Tactics Ogre though I do want to play, which is very similar to this game from what I understand. Some people like it better, some people don't. But it came out before, but the PSP remake apparently is quite good. So I'm definitely going to play that at some point. With how much I enjoyed this, because it was basically the same team that did that game. But yeah, let's talk about the visuals now. I loved the look of this game. I mean, it's a PS1 game, but I love PS1 era JRPGs. The way they look, the sprites, the environments. Like, a lot of people would find it ugly, but I don't know, man. I just find it really appealing. The whole look to the game, the setting. I don't know. Visually, it's nice to look at, but of course you have the slowdown with the War of the Lions version, where spell effects cause like extreme slowdown. It's very noticeable, but it didn't bother me all that much, which is weird. It's so noticeable, yet it didn't bother me. But I've never been someone that complains about frame rate all that much. So it's going to really vary with people. Like some people are going to find this game unplayable because of it, and some people are going to be like me and find it tolerable. But it does suck, and it is weird. Like the game doesn't look. It's not like this. It's not like pushing a bunch of polygons or anything like that. So I don't know how the slowdown made it into this remake. It's kind of disappointing in a way, but I really do like the look of the game. Audio. You have the voice acting in the cutscenes, like I mentioned earlier, and the voice acting is decent. It's not amazing, but it's fine. The soundtrack, it actually didn't grab me as much as I was expecting. I actually feel like it might be one of the weaker soundtracks in the series, and I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me there. I don't know, like the music's good, like it's definitely good and it fits the game, but nothing really grabbed me or stood out to me. My favorite song was actually the song that plays in the tutorial. I don't know, there's something about that song that I just really liked, but overall the soundtrack, I don't know, it's not as memorable as most Final Fantasy games I find. I don't know, there's something about it that just didn't quite stick with me, but it's good, it's certainly not bad. None of the tracks are bad, but I was surprised I thought I would enjoy it more, I gotta be honest, but yeah, what else can I say about the game? I guess the translation with the War of the Lions. The dialogue is very... It's an acquired taste, I think. I wasn't crazy about it. It's like very old-timey, medieval, almost Shakespearean in a way. And I don't know, it certainly has flavor. The game certainly has flavor, but I don't know, it's a bit... I think it causes the game to be a little dry and dull at times, but I can't deny that it does fit the tone of the game and the setting of the game overall. So I can understand why people love this translation compared to the apparently awful translation of the original. But yeah, I wasn't crazy about it. But it's not a huge deal or anything like that. But yeah, I'm trying to think. That, I mean, about covers it. I know a pretty long review, but you know me, I like to go in depth and extensive. But obviously, there's probably a lot of things I'm missing. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I gotta say, it's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. It's up there with like 7, 8, and 9. I really love the PS1 Final Fantasy games for some reason. They're like my favorites. But and it's a game I can see myself replaying in the future for sure. And it has my favorite implementation of the job system, really. I feel like the job system actually works best with strategy RPGs for whatever reason. But yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics War Alliance, highly recommended if you really enjoy strategy RPGs. Just be warned, there's a lot of annoying things about it, and it's rough. Like, yeah, this game is fucking hard. But yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.